Hello again. On many of these vidcasts, I've talked about how London is being transformed, or rather destroyed, by the influx of the world's billionaires and the multimillionaires and the impact it's had on housing. This is enthusiastically supported by the governments of all shades, along with the likes of Boris Johnson, present Mayor of London, and his predecessor, Labour's Ken Livingstone. The result of this is that today, London is no longer affordable to millions of Londoners, including many middle-class people who are not on the property ladder. The situation is critical. We're long past the 11th hour. Soon, here in the wealthy southeast, there will be millions in a state of total and permanent housing insecurity, unable to afford housing of any description, unable to rent. So what can we do? Particularly those who are directly affected, including many people that I know and that we all know. Well, there has developed in the space of less than a year resistance, thankfully. It's on the political radar now. For example, the brilliant E15 women, the occupation of empty flats on the Aylesbury estate, South London, the forthcoming struggle in the Sweetsway estate and Barnet, the Guinness Trust occupations in Brixton, the Poor Doors protests in Aldgate, and of course the wonderful Central London crew who are currently occupying 123 Pall Mall, the empty Institute of Directors buildings. And this is just a tip of what's admittedly a small iceberg, but as it increases in volume, it could help sink future minority governments. These vidcasts have always pointed towards housing as the most important, by far, immediate social and political challenge that faces this United Kingdom. During the 1950s and 1960s, many hundreds of thousands of social housing units were constructed under the Conservative administration of Harold Macmillan and Labour's Harold Wilson. They really were needed nationwide and still didn't completely solve the housing problem by far. For example, you've only got to look at Ken Loach's Cafe Come Home. But since the 1980s, under Thatcher's Right to Buy scheme, social housing has diminished considerably to the crisis levels of today. And don't forget that under 13 years of Labour, with Tony Blair and Gordon Brown at the helm, 425,000 social housing units vanished into private hands. The struggle against this has begun with these grassroots actions that I've mentioned. Let's make sure it's not too little, too late. It's got to spread and spread rapidly. The social housing movement has to demand that hundreds of thousands of social housing units be constructed every year. This has to be reinforced by mass occupations of the huge numbers of empty properties. The homeless, or virtually homeless, have to take direct action and do it themselves. Mass construction of social housing should be the main demand of every concerned person. After all, it's a question of priorities. Governments spend money on things like Trident, disastrous overseas military adventures, but particularly pumping untold billions in an upward torrent to the rich, in particular the bankers. We don't want affordable housing that none of us can afford unless we win the lottery, nor housing for key workers. Social housing should be for everyone who requires it or desires it. None of this divide and rule stuff. It can be done. It would boost the economy, create jobs, spending power, and lift people, millions of them, out of debt. We should also demand, and enforce from below, that all empty properties bought as investments should be confiscated. Any social democratic system could do this, but they won't even think of it. They lack the will, the imagination, and the guts. It requires extensive pressure from below. They shouldn't expect a growing section of the population just to sit back and take it. Also, social housing should be run by the tenants, not some distant, overpaid bureaucracy. As a practical suggestion, I say support all occupations, create more, resist social cleansing, resist evictions. Come and join the Homeless March in central London mid-April. Link up with like-minded people. Let's put social housing on the agenda as the main item. To hell with the blood-sucking landlords, the scum of the earth, squeezing every penny out of us for the dubious pleasure of paying £250 a week for living in a converted living room, or stagnating in a in a garden shed. See you on the homeless demo. Let's link up and get started, making social housing the demand of 2015 and beyond.